I sat in the conference room, watching my parents sign papers that erased me from the family business. The pen scratched across the signature line, and my stomach twisted into knots. My mother-in-law, Patricia, sat across from me with her hands folded neatly, wearing a small, satisfied smile. My husband, Marcus, stood by the window, refusing to meet my eyes. "This is temporary," Patricia said, her voice calm and measured. "Just until we restructure." I wanted to believe her. I'd spent 20 years building this company alongside my parents. Late nights fixing supplier crises, weekends handling payroll disasters, holidays spent on the phone with angry clients. I'd given up promotions, friendships, and pieces of myself to keep the doors open. Now, at 40 years old, I watched my mother's trembling hand sign my name away. "Temporary," I whispered, but the word felt hollow. My father wouldn't look at me either. He just stared at the table, jaw tight, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Patricia slid another document forward. I barely glanced at it before signing. My brain felt foggy, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. Then I noticed something. One page had a clause I didn't understand. Patricia shuffled papers quickly, covering it. "Just standard legal language," she said smoothly. "But why hide it?" I left the building in a daze, my car keys heavy in my shaking hand. The parking lot stretched endlessly before me. I'd walked through these doors nearly every day for 2 decades. Now I felt like a stranger. My phone buzzed, Marcus calling. I ignored it. At home, I replayed every sacrifice. The college degree I never finished because the business needed me. The promotion at another firm I turned down because family comes first. The friends who stopped inviting me out because I always chose work over them. All of it gone in one afternoon. Marcus arrived home late, smelling of expensive cologne and guilt. "You should be grateful," he said, loosening his tie. "Most people don't get a clean break at 40. You can finally relax." Relax? I'd built that company from near bankruptcy to 7-figure revenue. I'd negotiated contracts his mother couldn't even read. I'd saved them countless times. "Your mother planned this," I said quietly. He shrugged. "She's protecting the family assets. You understand." I understood perfectly. I just didn't matter anymore. That night, I slept in the guest room. When Marcus called the next morning, I didn't answer. Or the morning after that. Something inside me had shifted. 2 weeks later, Patricia hosted a family dinner. I almost didn't go, but my mother called, voice shaking, begging me to come. "Please, honey, for us." I arrived late, still wearing my work clothes from the consulting job I'd taken to pay bills. Patricia presided at the head of the table, radiant in designer clothing, holding court like a queen. Marcus sat beside her, laughing at something she said. "Well, if it isn't our prodigal daughter," Patricia announced when I entered. Everyone turned. My cheeks burned. She raised her wine glass. "I want to thank everyone for trusting me during this transition. Removing dead weight was difficult, but necessary. The company's already running smoother." Dead weight. She meant me. My parents shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. My father studied his plate. My mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Patricia continued. "I've already found a replacement. Someone with fresh ideas and actual business school credentials. Not just," she glanced at me, "years of making excuses." I gripped my fork so hard my knuckles went white. Marcus touched his mother's arm proudly. "You saved the company, Mom." Later, as I left, Patricia cornered me in the hallway. "You'll be happier now," she whispered. "Trust me." I smiled tightly. "I'm sure I will." Monday morning, I drove past the building out of habit. Something pulled me to stop. I used my old key card, it still worked. Inside, I headed toward my former office, the one with windows overlooking the production floor I'd helped design. The door was open. The office was empty. Completely. My desk gone. My files gone. Even the plant I'd kept alive for 8 years gone. Fresh paint covered the walls where my certifications had hung. It looked like I'd never existed. I checked my email on my phone. Access denied. I called our longtime supplier, Vincent, who'd been with us since the beginning. His assistant said he was unavailable. I called 3 more vendors. Same response. It felt coordinated, deliberate. My phone rang, unknown number. I answered. "It's Vincent," he said quietly. "Can't talk long. They told us you're out. Patricia's calling the shots now, but—" He paused. "She doesn't know what she's doing. Last week's shipment was wrong. She blamed us. 3 other vendors are already pulling back. Vincent, I just thought you should know. They're struggling. Already." He hung up. I sat in my car, staring at the building I'd helped save a dozen times. They'd erased me in days, but apparently they needed me more than they realized. I stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped fighting. Patricia had been spreading stories. I couldn't handle pressure. I was holding everyone back. I'd become unstable. My silence seemed to confirm it. People who'd known me for years suddenly avoided eye contact at the grocery store. Marcus moved out of the guest room, assuming I'd forgiven him. I hadn't. I just didn't have energy to argue. Patricia told mutual friends I was going through something and needed space. Everyone nodded, sympathetically, believing her version. At night, alone in my home office, I did something different. I started reading the paperwork from that conference room. Every single page, every clause, every footnote. The legal language was dense, designed to confuse. But I'd spent 20 years reading contracts. I knew how to find what mattered. Most of it was standard: severance terms, non-compete agreements, liability waivers. Then, buried on page 47 of a 60-page document, I found something strange. A clause about long-term operational performance benchmarks and deferred equity rights. I read it 3 times, then 5. My heart started pounding. The clause referenced specific performance metrics: revenue growth percentages, client retention rates, operational efficiency improvements. Metrics achieved over 20 years. Metrics only I had achieved. The clause hadn't expired. It was still active. I couldn't sleep. The clause kept circling my mind. It mentioned deferred equity, ownership rights earned through performance, not given through family ties. It was technical, buried deliberately, written in language that assumed no one would read carefully. But I had. At 3 a.m., I sat at my kitchen table, highlighter in hand, cross-referencing the clause with old company reports I'd kept. Every benchmark listed, I'd met it. Revenue targets, I'd exceeded. Client retention numbers, I'd personally maintained. Cost reductions, I'd implemented. The clause had been inserted years ago, probably by the company's original attorney, as protection for key operational leaders. My parents likely forgot it existed. Patricia definitely didn't know. She'd pushed me out assuming blood relations were all that mattered legally. She was wrong. The clause was valid, enforceable, and it gave me rights they'd assumed I'd lost. Not just advisory rights or token involvement. Real power, real authority, the kind that couldn't be erased with a signature. I made coffee and watched the sunrise, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. Not the desperate kind, but the quiet, dangerous kind. The kind built on facts instead of feelings. They thought removing me ended the story. They had no idea what they'd actually done. I found an attorney. Not our family lawyer, someone independent. His name was Howard Klein, and he specialized in corporate disputes. His office smelled like old books and expensive leather. I laid out the paperwork. Howard read for 40 minutes without speaking. Finally, he looked up, eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. "This is enforceable. Absolutely. It's iron-clad. They don't know." I asked. "They should, but people miss things." He tapped the clause. "You met every single benchmark. Not just met, exceeded. that triggers the deferred equity provision. You're entitled to stakeholder status. My hands trembled slightly. What does that mean? It means you have rights. Board oversight, financial transparency, decision-making input. They can't legally exclude you. He leaned forward. The question is, do they know you fulfilled this? I thought about Patricia's smug smile, Marcus's indifference, my parents' guilty silence. No, they don't. Howard nodded slowly. Then you have an advantage. Timing matters in these situations. You could file immediately, force their hand. Or, he paused. You could wait. Let them show their cards first. Wait, I asked. Sometimes the best move is watching your opponent make mistakes. He smiled slightly, especially when they think they've already won. I left his office with a strategy. I wouldn't act yet. I'd observe, plan, let them believe I was defeated while I rebuilt myself properly. Patience, I'd learned, was its own kind of power. 2 days later, I received a call from Townsend and Associates, a partner firm that had worked with our family business for years. They'd always dealt with me directly. I was the one who understood their needs. We heard you left, the senior partner, Malcolm Townsend, said carefully. We're concerned about continuity. I was pushed out, I said honestly. Silence. Then, would you consider consulting for us? We need someone who understands operational management. Your reputation speaks for itself. I accepted immediately. The pay was good, the respect better. Within a week, I had an office, a title, Director of Strategic Operations, and projects that actually challenged me. People listened when I spoke. They valued my input. For the first time in months, I felt useful. Then I discovered something interesting. Townsend and Associates still did significant business with my family's company. Supply contracts, logistics coordination, compliance consulting. They were deeply interconnected, which meant I'd have visibility into my old company's operations without technically being involved. I'd see their decisions, their struggles, their mistakes. And I'd do it all while rebuilding my professional reputation elsewhere. Malcolm noticed my expression during one meeting. Problem, he asked. No, I said, smiling. Just interesting timing. He nodded knowingly. Sometimes the right opportunities appear exactly when needed. The cracks started showing within months. I heard through industry contacts, small problems at first, missed deadlines, cost overruns, communication breakdowns, the kind of issues that seemed minor individually but created chaos collectively. Patricia had hired someone named Brandon as my replacement. He had an MBA from a decent school and zero practical experience. He knew theory but couldn't handle real-world crises. When a key supplier threatened to pull out over a payment dispute, Brandon panicked and overpaid, setting a terrible precedent. I learned this through Townsend and Associates, who were copied on the correspondence. Malcolm shook his head. That'll cost them long-term. Other suppliers will expect the same treatment. I said nothing, but I felt a grim satisfaction. I'd handled situations like that dozens of times, firmly but fairly, protecting both relationships and budgets. Brandon was learning expensive lessons. Marcus called one evening. Hey, can we talk about the company? I don't work there anymore, I reminded him. I know, but Dad seems stressed. Mom won't admit anything's wrong, but the numbers don't look great. Then hire someone competent, I said coldly. He sighed. Brandon's trying. He's just adjusting. Good luck with that, I said and hung up. Later, my mother called. Her voice was shaky, older sounding. Sweetheart, we miss you around here. Things are different. My heart ached, but I stayed firm. You made a choice, Mom. Now live with it. They invited me to dinner. Just to talk, my father said. I almost refused, but curiosity won. I arrived at their house, the one I'd grown up in, and found them sitting in the living room looking exhausted. We're sorry, my mother started, eyes wet, for how things happened, for how it felt. I repeated carefully. My father shifted uncomfortably. We were overwhelmed. Patricia seemed so confident. She said it was best for everyone. Best for everyone, I echoed, meaning best for her. We didn't realize how much you did, Mom continued. All the little things that kept everything running. Brandon's competent, but he's not you. There it was. Not an apology for what they did. Just regret about the consequences. They weren't sorry they'd betrayed me. They were sorry it inconvenienced them. We thought maybe you could help, Dad said quietly. Unofficially. Just some advice here and there. For the family. I stood up. For the first time in my life, I said the word that had been trapped inside me for 40 years. No. They stared, shocked. Honey. No, I repeated. I'm done being your safety net. You chose Patricia. You chose Marcus. You chose everyone except me. Now deal with it yourselves. I walked out, shaking but free. Behind me, I heard my mother crying. At Townsend and Associates, my work began attracting attention. I had stabilized 2 struggling operations in 4 months, something the firm had been trying to do for over a year. Malcolm publicly credited me during a board meeting, and word spread quickly in our industry. Trade publications called for interviews. I gave them, carefully positioning myself as an independent expert, not mentioning the family drama. Experience matters, I told one journalist. You can't replace decades of practical knowledge with a degree. The article ran with my photo and a glowing profile. Colleagues congratulated me. LinkedIn requests flooded in. My professional reputation, which had been tied to my family's business, was now entirely mine. Then Patricia called. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message dripping with fake sweetness. Saw your article. Very nice. Let's have lunch soon. I deleted it, but I knew what it meant. She'd seen me rising independently, building credibility she couldn't control. It threatened her narrative that I'd been dead weight. If I was succeeding elsewhere, maybe I hadn't been the problem. Maybe she was. Marcus texted, Mom wants to talk. Please. I replied, Tell your mother I'm busy building the career she said I wasn't capable of. He didn't respond. 2 days later, I heard through Malcolm that Patricia had been asking questions about my role at Townsend. She was digging, trying to find ammunition. She was scared. Patricia cornered me outside a coffee shop. I'd been careful to avoid family events, but she'd apparently been tracking me. She approached, perfectly styled as always, but her smile was strained. We need to talk, she said, not asking. I don't think we do, I replied calmly. You're making things difficult, she hissed, dropping the pleasant facade. All this publicity, this new job. People are asking questions. You're interfering. I stopped walking and faced her. Interfering? I haven't spoken to anyone about the business. I'm living my life. You know, the one you insisted I'd be happier with. Don't play innocent. You're trying to make me look bad. Patricia, I don't have to try. You're doing that yourself. I stepped closer. I spent 20 years cleaning up messes, fixing problems, protecting the family. You spent 5 minutes convincing my parents I was disposable. Now you're panicking because it's falling apart without me. Her face flushed. We're doing fine. Really? Then why are 3 major suppliers threatening to leave? Why did Brandon overpay on that Clemson contract? Why are clients calling Malcolm asking if I'm available for consulting? Her eyes widened slightly. She hadn't known I had that level of visibility into their operations. You have no right. I have every right to succeed, Patricia. You just can't stand watching it happen. She opened her mouth, closed it, then walked away quickly. I watched her go, realizing something important. She wasn't just annoyed. She was genuinely frightened. And frightened people make mistakes. The collapse accelerated. A major contract, one I'd personally structured 5 years earlier, fell through. It was a complex logistics agreement with Anderson Manufacturing, worth over $2 million annually. I'd spent months negotiating terms that benefited both sides. Brandon tried to renew it using a template agreement. Anderson's team rejected it immediately. The original contract had specific clauses about flexibility, performance metrics, and graduated pricing that reflected their unique needs. Brandon's template was generic, impersonal, completely wrong. I learned this because Anderson's CEO called me directly at Townsend. "Is there any way you're involved with renewals?" he asked hopefully. "No, I left the company." "Damn. Well, we're not renewing. Brandon doesn't understand our operations. We'll find another supplier." $2 million annually gone. Just like that. I informed Malcolm professionally, and he mentioned it casually in an industry meeting. Word spread. Other clients started questioning the family business's stability. Were other key personnel leaving? Was quality slipping? Marcus called that evening, voice tight. Anderson canceled. Dad's devastated. Mom's blaming everyone except herself. This is bad. "I'm sure Brandon will figure it out," I said neutrally. "Stop." His voice cracked. "Please. I know I screwed up. I know Mom manipulated everything. But this is destroying Dad. Can we just talk? Really talk?" I hesitated. "Tomorrow. Coffee shop on 4th Street. Noon." "Thank you," he whispered. I hung up, uncertain what I'd say. But I knew one thing: I wasn't saving them. Marcus looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled shirt, hand shaking slightly as he stirred his coffee. We sat in the back corner, away from other customers. "Mom pushed for your removal," he said finally. "Not Dad. Not Mom. My mother. She convinced everyone you were tired, overwhelmed, ready to step back. She said it was for your own good. And you believed her." "I wanted to." He looked up, eyes red. It was easier than standing up to her. She's always been controlling. I thought if I just went along, kept the peace, everything would work out. "How's that working?" I asked coldly. He flinched. "I was trying to protect you. From stress. From the pressure. I thought you'd be relieved." "Protect me," I repeated slowly. "Marcus, I built that company. I saved it. Multiple times. I wasn't a victim needing rescue. I was the most competent person there." "I know that now," he whispered. "Now, after it's falling apart." I leaned forward. "Here's what I don't understand. You watched your mother erase me. You said nothing. You stood at that window, silent, while I was cut out of the business I'd bled for. Then you had the audacity to tell me I should be grateful. I was wrong. You were complicit." Silence stretched between us. Finally, I asked the question I'd been holding. "If I hadn't been your wife, would you have stayed silent?" He couldn't answer. That was answer enough. I stood up. "Fix your own mess, Marcus. I'm done cleaning up after your family." Howard called 2 weeks later, voice carefully controlled. "The conditions have been met." "What conditions?" I asked, though I knew. "The performance clause. The company's recent restructuring, the changes they made when they removed you, triggered specific provisions. The metrics, the timelines, everything aligns. Legally, you're entitled to enforce the deferred equity rights." My heart pounded. "They don't know." "Not yet, but they will once we file notice. It's required by law. 30 days before enforcement, they must be formally notified of any stakeholder claims." And then, I asked, "Then they'll panic. They'll scramble to find loopholes." "They won't find any. The clause is airtight, and you fulfilled every requirement. They can't contest it without admitting they've mismanaged the company in your absence." I thought about Patricia's smug smile, Marcus's weak apologies, my parents' guilty silence. "File it," I said. "You're sure?" "Once this starts." "File it, Howard. It's time they learned what they actually signed." 3 days later, Howard sent the formal notice via certified mail and legal courier. The document outlined my deferred equity rights, the fulfilled performance benchmarks, and my new status as a legal stakeholder with board oversight privileges. I imagined their faces opening that envelope. The confusion, the panic, the realization that they'd underestimated the woman they'd discarded. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt ready. The phone calls started immediately. My mother crying. My father confused. Marcus angry. Patricia demanding. I ignored all of them and let Howard handle communication. An emergency board meeting was called, without me initially. Howard shut that down. Ms. Henderson has stakeholder rights. Excluding her violates corporate governance. Try it, and we'll have this company in court by Friday. They rescheduled. Included me. I received the formal invitation via email. Emergency board meeting regarding stakeholder claims. Your presence is required. Required. The word made me smile. 2 months ago, they'd kicked me out. Now they were legally obligated to include me. I selected my outfit carefully, professional, expensive, understated. The kind of look that said I didn't need to prove anything. The night before the meeting, Marcus showed up at my door. Please don't do this, he begged. We can work something out. Mom's willing to compromise. Compromise? I laughed bitterly. She threw me away like garbage. She told people I was incompetent. She erased 20 years of my life in one afternoon. Now she wants to compromise. She's scared. Good. She should be. I started closing the door. See you tomorrow, Marcus. I love you, he said desperately. I paused. You loved the version of me that did everything you wanted. You never loved the person I actually was. I closed the door. He stood there for minutes before finally leaving. I walked into the building at exactly 9 a.m., briefcase in hand. Security tried to stop me, then recognized my face and awkwardly waved me through. The receptionist stared. Employees whispered as I passed. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor, the executive level I'd never been allowed on when I actually worked here. The boardroom was exactly as I remembered. Long mahogany table, leather chairs, windows overlooking the production floor. My parents sat together, looking older and smaller. Patricia sat across from them, perfectly composed but pale. Marcus stood by the window, his usual spot. Brandon, my replacement, sat nervously at the far end. I took the seat at the head of the table. Howard sat beside me. No one spoke. The air felt thick with unspoken accusations and buried guilt. Finally, Patricia broke the silence. This is ridiculous. She's making a mockery of... Careful, Howard interrupted smoothly. Any statements made here can be used in legal proceedings. I'd suggest you speak thoughtfully. Patricia's mouth snapped shut. The family attorney, some nervous young man I didn't recognize, cleared his throat. We've reviewed the documentation. The clause appears valid. Appears? Howard raised an eyebrow. It is valid, unambiguously. Would you like me to explain why? Silence. My father finally spoke, voice hoarse. What do you want? I met his eyes. What I've always wanted. Respect. Patricia couldn't contain herself. This is extortion, she burst out, standing abruptly. You're using some buried legal technicality to claim what I earned. I finished calmly. 20 years of work, Patricia. Every benchmark in that clause. I exceeded it. Revenue growth, me. Client retention, me. Operational efficiency, me. While you were playing corporate politics, I was actually running the company. That's not, she started. Sit down, the company attorney said sharply. Everyone turned, surprised. He looked at Patricia directly. Everything she's saying is documented. The clause isn't a technicality. It's legitimate deferred compensation for measurable performance. You signed off on the restructuring that triggered it. Patricia's face went from pale to blotchy red. I didn't know. Ignorance isn't a defense, Howard said. You pushed through a restructuring without reviewing all legal obligations. That's your failure, not hers. Marcus stepped forward. Mom, just stop. Please. She whirled on him. You're taking her side? There are no sides, he shouted. There's just what's legal and what's not. She has rights. You can't wish them away. Patricia looked around the room, seeking support. My father studied the table. My mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Brandon looked like he wanted to disappear. The attorney kept typing notes, deliberately avoiding her gaze. She was alone, completely. Her authority, so absolute before, collapsed in real time. I watched, feeling not triumph, but something quieter. Inevitability. The attorney outlined my legal rights. Board oversight, financial transparency, decision-making input. She can't be excluded from strategic planning, he explained. Any major contracts, hiring decisions, or financial restructuring require stakeholder approval. Patricia's face was stone. So what, she's back? After everything? Everyone looked at me. This was the moment they expected me to gloat, to reclaim my old position, to make them beg. Marcus's eyes held desperate hope. My parents looked resigned, waiting for my demands. I placed my hands flat on the table. No. Confusion rippled through the room. No, my father repeated. I don't want my old job back, I said clearly. I don't want to return to this company, spend my days fixing your mistakes, or sacrifice myself again for people who didn't value me. Then what do you want? Patricia demanded. I looked at Howard. He opened his briefcase and distributed documents. Ms. Henderson proposes the following. First, formal acknowledgement of her contributions over 20 years. Second, full financial transparency and quarterly reporting. Third, oversight authority on all major decisions. Fourth, structured compensation reflecting her stakeholder status. She wants money, Patricia muttered. I want what I earned, I corrected. And I want accountability. No more backroom deals. No more nepotism. No more erasing people who inconvenience you. The company operates transparently, or I exercise my full legal rights to audit everything. My father nodded slowly. That's fair. Patricia looked betrayed. You're siding with her? I'm siding with what's right, Dad said quietly. The implementation was brutal for them. I didn't return as an employee. I returned as an auditor. Every decision required documented justification. Every contract needed stakeholder approval. Every hire went through proper vetting, not family connections. Brandon, overwhelmed and underprepared, resigned within 2 weeks. I'm not equipped for this, he admitted to me privately. You were right. I didn't understand what this job required. I'm sorry. I appreciated his honesty. Patricia tried to install another replacement, her nephew. I blocked it. Qualification requirements, I said simply, pointing to the new hiring protocols. He doesn't meet them. She was furious but powerless. The board backed me. Even Marcus supported the changes, watching his mother's influence crumble with something like relief in his eyes. Financial transparency revealed what I'd suspected. Mounting debt, deferred payments to suppliers, creative accounting to hide problems. Without me, they'd been hemorrhaging money and covering it with paperwork. How bad? My father asked during one review. Survivable, I said, if you make real changes. We restructured. I brought in outside consultants, not family friends, actual experts. We renegotiated supplier contracts, implemented proper management systems, and established clear accountability. It wasn't personal. It was professional, and it worked. Patricia watched everything she'd built dissolve. Not the company, her informal power structure. She'd controlled everything through relationships and intimidation. Now, the rules applied to everyone equally. Her nephew asked her privately, loud enough for me to overhear, Aunt Patricia, what happened? She had no answer. The board voted to remove Patricia from any advisory role. The decision was unanimous. Not because they hated her, but because her involvement had become a liability. She demonstrated poor judgment, created legal exposure, and damaged stakeholder relationships. My father delivered the news. I wasn't in the room, but Marcus told me later. Patricia had argued, pleaded, then raged. It didn't matter. The decision stood. With her went Marcus's position. He hadn't been formally fired, but his role, Special Projects Coordinator, essentially a made-up title, was eliminated during restructuring. He was offered a lower position with actual responsibilities. He declined and left voluntarily. That evening, he came to the house we'd once shared. I'd been staying there since he'd moved out weeks earlier. "I need to ask you something," he said, standing in the doorway like a stranger. "What?" "Can you fix this?" "Mom's position, my job, can you get it back?" I stared at him. After everything, the betrayal, the silence, the complicity, he was asking me to save them. "No," I said simply. "You won't, or you can't." "Both. I won't because you don't deserve it. I can't because the company needs competence, not nepotism. You had every chance to do the right thing, Marcus. You chose your mother over your wife, over basic decency. I made a mistake." "You made a choice," I corrected, repeatedly. "Now live with the consequences." He stood there, searching my face for softness. He found none. "I already fixed it," I told him calmly. "Just not for you." Marcus's face crumpled. "What are we now? Are we even married?" I finished. "Legally, yes. In any way that matters? No. We haven't been for a long time. I can change. I can." "Change for yourself, Marcus. Not for me. Not for the company. Figure out who you actually are without your mother pulling your strings." He left. I didn't cry. I'd cried enough already, for the marriage I'd thought we had, for the family I'd believed in, for the years I'd wasted being smaller than I was to make other people comfortable. Now, I felt strangely light. Free. I hadn't destroyed them. I'd simply stopped protecting them from themselves. There's a difference. Destruction requires force. Exposure just requires stepping aside and letting truth do its work. Howard called later. They're requesting final settlement terms. They want clean breaks, clear documentation, everything formally resolved. "Give them standard stakeholder terms," I said. "Fair market compensation, appropriate oversight, transparent operations. Nothing vindictive, nothing excessive, just what's right." "You sure? You could push for more." "I don't need more. I need peace." We finalized the agreements. I secured long-term compensation reflecting my contributions, maintained oversight authority to prevent future disasters, and formally stepped away from daily operations. I chose independence over control, freedom over power. They watched me leave. Again, but this time on my terms. Months passed. The company stabilized under proper management. My parents finally admitted the truth to themselves, to each other, and eventually to the few family members who still cared. "We failed her," my father said at a family gathering I didn't attend. "We chose comfort over courage." My mother called afterward. "We understand if you can't forgive us. We just want you to know we see it now. What we did, what we let Patricia do." "I know," I said. "I appreciate you saying it." "Will you ever come back? To the family, I mean. Not the business." I thought carefully. "Maybe. Someday. When it doesn't hurt to remember." She accepted that. They both did. Patricia, meanwhile, disappeared from family events. She'd moved to Florida, I heard, near her nephew. Marcus stayed local, working some middle management position at a logistics company. We ran into each other occasionally. Polite nods, careful distance. The divorce papers sat on my desk for weeks before I signed them. Not because I still loved him, but because signing felt like closing a 20-year chapter. Finally, I did it. He signed too, without drama. We were both ready to stop pretending. I kept my married name professionally. It was attached to my reputation now. but reclaimed my given name, personally. Small freedom, but meaningful. I attended therapy, traveled, reconnected with friends I'd neglected, remembered who I'd been before I'd made myself smaller. The final board meeting I attended was 2 years after the initial confrontation. The company had recovered, not thriving but stable. My parents were retiring officially, selling controlling interest to an outside firm. I had negotiated favorable terms for them. It was the right thing to do. As we signed the final documents, my father held my hand. "You saved us," he said quietly. Again. "I saved the company," I corrected gently. "Not for you. For the employees who depend on it, the clients who trust it, the community it serves." He nodded, understanding the distinction. My mother hugged me at the door. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "Not for this," she gestured at the documents, "but for becoming who you were supposed to be." "Me too," I said honestly. I drove away from that building for the last time. In my rearview mirror, it grew smaller, less significant. Just a place I used to work. Not my identity. Not my purpose. Just history. I never attended another meeting. The oversight became formalized, handled by professional auditors. My compensation arrived quarterly, significant but not excessive. I donated most of it to business. Mentorship programs for women, helping others avoid the mistakes I'd made, the silence I'd accepted, the invisibility I'd worn like armor.